Hey, what's up, guys? Okay, so Eden Zero, chapter 144. This chapter actually opens up with a pretty interesting conversation between the members of the Oasis group, as they're kind of romanticizing the event that happens in the Out Cosmos with the High Tide. Which, I'll be honest with you, I never really thought too much about how the High Tide functioned until this chapter, and the way they describe it is actually kind of interesting. They describe it as basically being able to fly through space in a spaceship while being underwater at the same time, which kind of sounds like an interesting concept, and I don't think, unfortunately, Hero's really going to be able to explore that concept too much in the manga, but I think if the anime gets to season 3, because assuming that season 1, from what I hear, is going to be ending around the time of I believe, the Crimson Flower arc, or the arc where we find out about Homura's mom, around that time is where the first season of the anime is supposed to end, so assuming it gets a second season, I think that season would end just before this arc. So we would get this arc in season 3, and I'm really looking forward to seeing exactly how the animators will animate the event of the High Tide. Now, even though this conversation in the beginning of the chapter was very interesting, unless the hero's setting up something or foreshadowing something that I'm just not picking up on right now, it doesn't really have much story relevance, and I kind of feel like that this portion of the chapter is only here just to kind of get us more accustomed to and more connected to these certain members of the Oasis crew, only in the off chance that Hero decides to kill them off by the end of this conflict. That way we could actually kind of feel sad about their deaths, because as of right now we don't really have a connection to anyone besides Goodwin, and even him we barely are connected to. So really, as of right now, if any of the members were to die, we wouldn't really feel that sad about it, but if he actually, decides to spend more time with them, basically developing the characters, we will grow attached to them, and then by the end of the arc, when they end up dying, we will actually walk away pretty sad by it. And speaking of Goodwin, I actually mentioned this in a chapter review about 3 chapters ago, when Goodwin actually kind of hinted at the idea of trying to team up with Eraser, and we actually see that come into fruition in this chapter, where he actually is having a conversation with Eraser, explaining to him exactly how the All-Link system works, and that their plan is basically to stop him, or stop Shura, I should say, from activating that system, which Eraser already knew about the All-Link, and does actually agree in this chapter to work together with Goodwin and the Oasis crew. Even though he mentions he doesn't really want to work with a civilian organization, he realizes that he kind of is out of options right now, which we already know is a lie because of the fact that Justice and Jaguar we already know are on their way to back up Eraser. So we definitely know that Eraser is planning something, and Goodwin definitely picks up on the idea that Eraser has some kind of scheme that he's going to use the Oasis group to achieve, but he also knows that in order for him to basically hold out long enough for Shiki and the Eden Zero crew to defeat Shura on the planet's surface, he needs to team up with Eraser. So even though he's making a deal with the devil, he knows that he has no other choice. And the more I think about it, the more I'm really trying to figure out exactly what Eraser's plan is, because as of right now, I don't see any benefit to him betraying Goodwin, besides maybe being able to possibly capture Shiki by the end of this, but we already know that besides Justice, no member of the Eraser States Interstellar really cares about Shiki and sees him as a criminal, so there's no real point for him trying to, betray them, unless he's trying to get some kind of goodwill with Justice for some reason, and plans on handing Shiki over to Justice, which I don't really see as a possibility. We cut over to the planet's surface, and we see that Shiki is still fighting off against the robots that Shura left him with in the last chapter, and then we immediately cut over to the Eden Zero ship, where Shura is still holding down Sister, Witch, and Hermit with his gravity ether gear. Now, as soon as we cut over to them, we have Hermit establish a mental link with Shiki, trying to basically warn him that Shura is on board the ship and that they're in danger, which of course Shiki immediately tries to go over and help them, but he gets grabbed by one of the robots, held down, and then they all start this countdown, which was a countdown to self-destruction. And what is actually kind of sad about this scene is that while they're counting down, the robots are actually pledging their loyalty to Shura, someone who actually does not care whether or not they are alive or dead. So that actually is kind of sad, knowing that these robots devoted their entire lives to someone who was actively trying to destroy them. So yeah, Shiki gets caught up in a giant explosion, which obviously didn't kill him, but more than likely knocked him out for a little bit. But anyway, Jin, Laguna, and Klein actually pick up on the explosion, and Jin, realizing that that's the spot that they actually dropped Shiki off at, decides to go and actually check out what the situation is. So we're actually going to have most likely Jin in the next chapter, seeing Shiki knocked out on the ground from the explosion, pick him up, try to take him back to the Eden Zero ship, realize that Shura is there, and then probably end up fighting against Shura by himself. And that would actually be a pretty interesting matchup, because prior to their training with Zenolith, Shiki and Jin were around the same power level. Now obviously we don't know who's stronger now that they train with Zenolith, but I would imagine that they still are around the same strength. So if that does end up happening, then this actually could lead to a pretty interesting and intense fight. And really the only downside I see to this is that my theory about Couchwell being the one to save Sister, Witch, and Hermit kind of goes out the window now. And then immediately after that, we cut back over to the ending of the last chapter, where we have Homura seemingly betraying Wise and Rebecca. Now obviously we know this is basically just the mirror version of Homura being controlled by the Ultra 6 member, I believe her name was Milia. And Rebecca actually kind of picks up on this pretty early on, that Homura is being controlled, and this is actually kind of like a mirror version of her, because of the fact that her mole's on the other side. But for some reason, she does not decide to use her cat leap ability to reverse time 90 seconds prior to Homura being controlled, which I understand her reasoning at first because of the fact that she doesn't know exactly what caused this, but you would still think even with her limited number of uses for that ability that she would want to reverse time 90 seconds, and then even if Homura ended up getting controlled again, this time she could actually see exactly what Homura did to get controlled, immediately figure out what the cause is, reverse time one more time, and then basically just keep them all from looking into the mirrors. And ultimately, this is what she ends up doing by the end of the chapter anyway, because once Homura goes to attack them, and they defend against her using Pino's EMP ability, we have Wise who ends up looking into one of the mirrors and getting control himself, trying to shoot at Rebecca. So once Rebecca realizes that the mirror is the cause of it, she reverses time back 90 seconds prior to Wise getting controlled, but unfortunately she just missed the window for Homura being controlled, so they end up having to leave Homura behind as they run away, with Rebecca giving them the warning not to look into any of the mirrors. And then for some reason, the evil Homura just lets them run away without trying to attack them, which I think is just here to basically just for the comedic effect of seeing the evil Homura watching them as they run away, and then in the very next panel, have the real Homura react in the mirror world to the situation. Now, we do immediately cut over right after that to the mirror world. We get to see Homura trapped inside of it, and we see her actually coming face to face with the Ocean 6 member Melia. So yeah, seemingly in the next chapter we're going to have Homura fighting up against Melia in the mirror world, which really is giving me vibes, like I said in the last chapter review, of the whole fight that went down with Man in the Mirror in JoJo Part 5. Which really has me excited because, like I said in my last review, Man in the Mirror was my favorite stand from JoJo Part 5, so if Hero's taking any inspiration from that stand's ability in that fight, I am definitely in for a treat with the next chapter. But anyway guys, that's where the chapter ends. Sorry this video came out so late compared to when the chapter actually got released. You know, life just kind of happened. I didn't have time to record it the day the chapter came out. That's why it's coming out like 2 days later, because I just didn't have time in my schedule. But that's it for the video guys. Thanks for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, drop me a like and subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate that. Comment down below your thoughts and theories, and I will catch you guys in the next chapter review. Peace.